I never thought the day would come where I'd make a list of dumb Star Wars decisions and not have Jar Jar anywhere in it, but here I am. Solo, a Star Wars story nobody asked for. So, who thought it was a good idea to give Han Solo a prequel story? Han Solo is one of the coolest characters in film history, introduced right in A New Hope, or as it was originally known, just Star Wars. He was the guy who shot Greedo first. Yes, he was the one who shot in the original cut, but instead of leaving that legacy intact, they decided to give us a prequel story right after killing off the real Han Solo, played by Harrison Ford. Enter Alden Ehrenreich to step into those massive shoes. How exciting is it to watch a character go through an arc from anti-hero to hero, only to see it rehashed in a prequel? It makes Han's original trilogy journey feel like a repeat. And did we really need to know why he's named Solo? Because he's solo. Get it? Please laugh now. Or where he got his blaster. Woody Harrelson handed it to him. Or how he met Chewie. Because he speaks Wookiee? The film felt like a checklist of references asking, hey, remember this? Well, this is how he got it. Will they add anything original, like showing how he used to be a complete scumbag, for example? Nah. To be fair, it's inoffensive overall to the overall Star Wars continuity, but just quite pointless. Why was it made? Bigger, better, more. The genius idea of making everything larger. Let's talk about Disney's approach to making things better in Star Wars. Apparently, their big idea was, what if we just made everything bigger? Like the AT-ATs were cool, right? So, let's make them bigger. Enter the AT-M6, because thicker legs obviously means more menacing, right? Will they do anything different than a regular AT-AT? Nope. And remember the Star Destroyers? Awesome ships, but what if we made them planet killers? They took one of the most iconic ships in Star Wars and thought, hey, what if we slapped a Death Star laser on it? Because that's how creativity works. Just take what you already have and supersize it. It's like they were playing with action figures and thought, yeah, but what if this one had a bigger gun? It's the same logic that gave us Starkiller Base, a Death Star on steroids that could destroy multiple planets at once. But here's the thing, bigger doesn't always mean better. Making everything larger and deadlier just makes the stakes feel bloated, not more intense. Imagine if they had actually created a balanced conflict with two evenly matched forces. The Empire that is slowly rebuilt from the ruins but acting on limited resources against a still-forming new republic, how much more interesting would that have been? A battle of wits, strategy, and guerrilla tactics instead of just who has the bigger gun. But no, we got cartoonishly large threats that somehow felt less threatening because they were so over the top. Mando and Grogu hijack the Book of Boba Fett. The Book of Boba Fett was supposed to be a gritty gangster series set in the Star Wars universe. Instead, we got a show that didn't know what it wanted to be. Was it about Boba Fett dealing with the Hutts? Not really. They leave after 2 episodes. Was it about his conflict with the Syndicates? Kind of, but the Tusken backstory was more engaging. Then they killed off the Tuskens, threw in the Power Rangers, and capped it off by bringing in Cad Bane just because Clone Wars fans would recognize him. But the real kicker? The show gets hijacked by Mando and Grogu. The episodes everyone actually liked were essentially The Mandalorian Season 2.5. Mando and Grogu reunite, completely undoing the emotional finale of The Mandalorian Season 2. If you didn't watch the Book of Boba Fett, you start Season 3 of The Mandalorian and think, why are they back together? Well, because the executives at Disney couldn't have their little cash machine out of the picture for too long. The Mandalorian and Grogu spending some time apart would have been good for the overall narrative. Their reunion should have come at a later point. Like, imagine Mando in Season 3 is at the brink of death when trying to get back Mandalore, and right at the brink of death, Luke and Grogu show up to save the day. This is oversimplified, but you get the point. This would have surely had people crying on the floor because they were apart for some time and now back together. But yeah, it didn't pan out that way, and Mando Season 3 shows that it was for the worse. Boba Fett's identity crisis. Let's talk about Boba Fett. He became iconic largely because of his cool armor and mysterious aura in The Empire Strikes Back. He had barely any lines, As You Wish being one of them, and yet he built a mythos. He was the ultimate bounty hunter with the coolest ship, but then Disney introduced Mando, or Din Djarin, who essentially became what we always imagined Boba Fett to be, so why do we need Boba anymore? When he appeared in The Mandalorian Season 2, he was exactly what we thought Boba Fett should be. Cold-blooded, yet honorable. He even threatened Grogu, but was fiercely loyal once he made a deal. But then the Book of Boba Fett happened, and he became something entirely different. A pushover. He just lets everyone push him around and takes it. The Wookiee attacks him, well, give him a job. The Moped gang try to mess with him, yeah, let's give them jobs too. Everyone gets a job. Except for poor Bib Fortuna. R.I.P. Bib Fortuna. I would have imagined him to be like, based on what we saw in The Mandalorian, mess with me, I'll mess you up, but if you work well, you'll get the honorary and respectful treatment. That's who he is in my eyes. What happened to the badass who threatened to kill a baby for his armor? Now he's just a cuddly teddy bear. Instead of the feared bounty hunter, he turned into a guy wandering around negotiating peace and resolving petty conflicts like the lack of water in a town. Like, sure, of course there's a political part to ruling a criminal empire, but why did Boba have to be the one doing the politics? They could have easily just had one of the side characters do the role, and Boba be the executioner. They took one of the most iconic anti-heroes and turned him into a soft, cuddly version of himself. The Mary Sue of Star Wars. This one's controversial, but it's simply true. Rey is a Mary Sue. Introduced in The Force Awakens as the new lead of the Star Wars sequel trilogy, she seemed promising. I like Daisy Ridley's performance, but even in the first movie I was like, how is she beating Kylo Ren with zero training? Yes, Kylo was injured, but still, he was trained for years by Luke Skywalker and also Snoke, so surely he can beat an untrained girl despite her being strong in the Force. As the sequels progress, Rey keeps unlocking new powers without explanation. Luke didn't train her, yet she's instantly good at everything. More powerful in the Force than Kylo, skilled in ways that even freak out Luke Skywalker. Then they try to explain it by making her a Palpatine, but it doesn't help. She's so overpowered she can do things that other characters never could. Healing people stabbed, a snake with a huge flesh wound, whatever is necessary to do, she can do. Rey never loses, never struggles, and is never truly tested, making her boring. Let's compare her to other female Star Wars characters like Ahsoka. She started as Anakin Skywalker's Padawan in the Clone Wars and developed into one of the most beloved characters in the Star Wars universe. Ahsoka was powerful, yes, but her journey was filled with struggles and growth. She made mistakes, got people killed, faced consequences, and had to earn her place as a skilled warrior and a wise leader. Her battles were hard-won, and her character depth came from overcoming significant challenges. Rey's journey falls flat in comparison because we never fear for her. There's no point where I'm on the edge of my seat like, damn, I'm afraid she could potentially lose here. She simply always wins. The sequel trilogy that had no plan. Speaking of the sequel trilogy, one of the biggest mistakes was making it without a clear plan. The idea was simply, let's make some Star Wars movies. They brought in J.J. Abrams for The Force Awakens and Rian Johnson for The Last Jedi, letting him write whatever he wanted. Johnson essentially threw out everything from The Force Awakens. Who's Snoke? Doesn't matter, he's dead. When The Last Jedi divided the fanbase, they brought Abrams back to undo Johnson's work. Suddenly, Rey's parentage matters. She's a Palpatine, and Palpatine himself is back. Lucas made up a lot as he went along with the original trilogy, but he had rough outlines. Disney's approach was more like your favorite childhood game of telephone, with the message getting garbled along the way, resulting in a disjointed and inconsistent trilogy. How can anyone approach a project like this? This is stuff they teach you on day one of the story writing course. The hyped and forgotten. Star Wars characters who went nowhere. They hyped up a bunch of new characters like they were going to be the next big thing in the galaxy far, far away, only to have them go nowhere. Let's start with Captain Phasma. Hyped as the new Boba Fett, she looked awesome in her chrome armor. The captain and superior of Finn, who should be absolutely disgusted with him for defecting, but what did she actually do? She got tossed in a trash compactor in The Force Awakens after shutting down the shields for the Resistance, might I add, and then got punked by Finn in The Last Jedi, dying in the most anticlimactic way possible. Wait, that also happened to Boba in the original trilogy. Maybe she is the new Boba after all. Moving on to Snoke, built up as the new Emperor Palpatine, the guy who was supposedly behind everything. The rise of the First Order, bringing the Sith back from the extermination by the hands of Luke. But what happens? Kylo Ren slices him in half with zero effort, and that's the end of it. No backstory, no significance, just another dead villain. Where did he come from? Nobody knows. How did he get hold of the First Order? Yeah, we won't tell you. How did he turn Kylo? Well, read our comics for that, duh. Then there's Maz Kanata, this ancient, wise character who's lived through so much history, holding on to Luke's lightsaber like she's Yoda's cousin. But does she actually contribute anything meaningful? Nope. She gives Rey the lightsaber and then disappears into the background, making you wonder why she was even there. Finn. Oh, poor Finn. He started out with such promise, a stormtrooper who turns against the First Order. That's a great concept. But instead of developing that, they turn him into a sidekick who spends 2 movies yelling, "Rey!" and trying his best to find his way back to her. Him and Phasma could have had this conflict of ideologies, but nah, we got him and Rose talking about war. Yeah, telling the child soldier about war. Great stuff right there. Finally, let's not forget about the Knights of Ren. The hype around them was built for 3 movies. They had this mysterious vibe, the helmet, the dark side energy. They were set up to be a major threat. But yeah, they just die quickly when Kylo gets his lightsaber eventually. Cool story, bro. Really worth the hype I invested. All these characters had potential, but Disney reduced them to glorified extras. Luke Skywalker, the last disgruntled Jedi. Remember the legendary Luke who destroyed the Death Star, saved his father, and was the last hope of the Jedi to rebuild the Broken Order? Now he's a grumpy old man living on an island, drinking green milk, and cut off from the Force because his nephew, Ben Solo, had a nightmare. Instead of helping Ben, Luke decides to kill him in his sleep. The same Luke who risked everything to redeem Darth Vader. Then they give Luke the lamest death possible. He doesn't even fight, just projects himself and dies from the effort. That's how they ended the story of the hero of the original trilogy. Subverting expectations is fine, but not at the cost of character integrity. I could go on how much I dislike this decision and how dumb it is, but yeah, just deal with the fact we never get to see the Grandmaster Luke ever in the way we imagined it. Somehow, Palpatine returned. Remember when Vader threw Palpatine down that shaft in Return of the Jedi? Well, forget about it. Palpatine's back with no explanation other than somehow Palpatine returned. It's the laziest retcon ever. Palpatine was the ultimate villain in the original trilogy, the mastermind behind everything. Bringing him back undermines all of it. Anakin's redemption, the prophecy of the Chosen One, Luke's journey, it's all meaningless now. The execution was so sloppy that it turned one of the most pivotal moments in Star Wars history into a joke. Like, he died this time by being electrocuted by his own lightning. How do we know he's dead for good now? Shouldn't the cloning, dark magic, and secrets only the Sith knew bring him back again for the 3rd time? It's a really dumb decision and didn't really add to the story either, as it had the same issue like with Snoke. Nothing was explained as to how and why he survived and came back. Let's kill Han, Luke, and Leia, but not together. They had Han, Luke, and Leia back and never put them in a scene together. What were they thinking? These characters were the heart of the original trilogy. Fans have yearned for the original cast to reunite for years. The best received part of the Force Awakens trailer was the scene where Han tells Chewie, "We're home." This is what the fans wanted, seeing their old favorite characters on screen again while passing the mantle on to the next generation. But we never get a single scene with all of them together in it. They killed Han in The Force Awakens without Luke or Leia around. Then they killed Luke in The Last Jedi without Han, and Leia was far away. Carrie Fisher tragically passed away, leading to Leia's off-screen death in The Rise of Skywalker. Not once did we see them together again. Fans wanted that reunion, and Disney blew it. Killing Han, Luke, and Leia separately without giving us that moment is the biggest travesty of all. Was there really no better story to tell? Why did they even have to die? Look, I'm all for killing off characters, but let it have some meaning behind it. Let them achieve something great or be the last one standing, emotionally sacrificing themselves for the greater good. But nope, every character of the original Star Wars trio just dies alone and sad. Honorable mention, the entire Acolyte story. Will I add anything more? Nope, I didn't watch it and neither should you. The Acolyte doesn't exist, as a fellow commenter pointed out. Disbanding the EU and building up a canon storyline they themselves can't keep to. Finally, the expanded universe. Remember when the EU was filled with rich stories that expanded the Star Wars lore in incredible ways? We had Thrawn, Mara Jade, the Solo Twins, basically a treasure trove of content that fans loved. But when Disney took over, they said, you know all that cool stuff? Yeah, it's not canon anymore. They disbanded the EU, calling it Legends, which is like saying it's a nice story, but it didn't really happen, and decided to build their own new canon. The problem? They couldn't even keep it straight themselves. Take the sequels. There was no plan, just a bunch of retcons. They changed things on the fly, like Rey's parentage or how the Force works, or bringing back Palpatine with a half-baked explanation. They couldn't decide what to do with their own storylines. Remember how the Resistance was supposed to be this scrappy underdog group? By the rise of Skywalker, they're apparently getting support from every corner of the galaxy, but only after Lando does a cameo. Disbanding the EU was a bold move, but if you're going to do that, you'd better bring something better to the table. Instead, we got a messy, inconsistent canon that even the creators can't keep track of. Okay, that's it. Like, comment, and subscribe.